Jake Morrison stared at the empty space where his ship used to be. The Lucky Strike was gone, and so was Captain Pete Williams. Jake touched his pocket where his last paycheck sat folded in half. 300 credits. Not enough to buy passage home to Earth. Not enough to rent a room for more than a week. The docking bay of Nexus Prime buzzed with activity around him. Aliens of every shape and size walked past, talking in languages he did not understand. Some had forearms, others had scales instead of skin. A few floated in small hover chairs, their bodies too strange for walking. Jake had seen it all before during his 5 years working freight runs, but today everything felt different. Today he was alone. "Hey, human," a voice called out behind him. Jake turned to see a short, green-skinned alien with too many eyes. "You look lost. Need directions?" "My ship left without me," Jake said. "Looking for work. Or cheap transport back to Earth." The alien laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Earth transport costs 2,000 credits minimum. Work is hard to find for humans here, but..." The creature moved closer, lowering his voice. "There is one place where a human might get lucky. The Cosmic Wheel Casino." Jake had heard stories about the Cosmic Wheel. Every spacer had. It was a massive casino built inside an old space station, run by the mysterious Vorthak Syndicate. People said you could win anything there or lose everything trying. "I'm not much of a gambler," Jake said. "Everyone is a gambler when they have no other choice," the alien replied. "Besides, humans have a reputation there. They say your species is unpredictable, makes you interesting at the tables." Jake walked through the station's crowded corridors for an hour before he found the entrance to the Cosmic Wheel. It was bigger than he expected. The casino filled an entire section of the station, with spinning neon signs in dozens of languages. The air smelled like ozone and excitement. Inside, the noise hit him like a wave. Slot machines chimed and buzzed. Cards shuffled at hundreds of tables. Creatures from across the galaxy shouted in joy or groaned in defeat. Holographic displays showed odds and payouts in numbers that made Jake's head spin. A tall, thin alien in a fancy uniform approached him. "Welcome to the Cosmic Wheel, human." "First time here?" "Yes," Jake said. "I don't have much to bet with." "Everyone starts somewhere," the alien said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "May I suggest the Quantum Hearts tables? Popular with your species. The game exists in probability until observed. Very human way of thinking." Jake found himself at a circular table with seats for 6 players. Only 2 were occupied. One player was a blob of purple jelly that somehow held cards in pseudopods. The other wore a long black robe with a hood pulled up. Jake could not see their face, only shadow. "New player," announced the dealer. Another Vorthak with silver skin. "Please state your opening bet." Jake looked at his credits again. He needed transport money, but he also needed to eat. 50 credits, he said. The purple blob made a gurgling sound that might have been laughter. The hooded figure said nothing, just pushed forward a stack of chips worth more than Jake made in a year. The game was strange. Each player received 5 cards, but the cards changed depending on how you looked at them. Jake had played poker before, but this was different. The cards seemed to shift and dance when he was not looking directly at them. For the first few hands, Jake played it safe. He won a little, lost a little. The purple blob was aggressive, betting big and losing bigger. Soon it left the table with angry, gurgling sounds. Now it was just Jake and the hooded figure. "Interesting play, human," a voice came from under the hood. It was female, melodic but sad. "You play with caution but also intuition. Rare combination." "Thanks, I think," Jake said, looking at his cards. He had something good, but with quantum cards, good could become bad in an instant. "The Vorthak tell me you are stranded," the woman continued. "No ship, little money. Desperate, but not foolish. This makes you dangerous at the table." Jake looked up, trying to see her face in the shadow of the hood. "Who are you?" "They call me the Weeping Regent," she said. "I am here to play one final game. The stakes are unusual." The dealer's silver face showed no expression. "Special rules for this hand. The winner takes all credits on the table, plus 1 additional prize. Both players must agree to the binding protocol." Jake did not know what the binding protocol was, but he looked at his dwindling chip stack. "What's the additional prize?" The Weeping Regent was quiet for a long moment. "Something neither of us wants, but both of us need." The dealer shuffled a new deck. These cards glowed with strange energy. Final hand. Quantum Hearts, unlimited stakes. "Do both players accept the binding protocol?" The hooded woman nodded. Jake hesitated, then thought about sleeping in the station's corridors with empty pockets. I accept. The cards came alive in Jake's hands. They shifted and changed, showing him possibilities instead of fixed values. He saw royal flushes and empty hands, winning combinations that existed only in potential. It was like trying to grab smoke. The weeping regent bet everything. Her entire stack worth more money than Jake had ever seen. Your move, human. Jake looked at his cards one more time. In the quantum state, he could see multiple hands overlapping. If he observed them wrong, he would have nothing. If he observed them right, he pushed his remaining credits forward. I call. The dealer raised one silver hand. Observation begins. Players reveal your hands. Jake focused on his cards, forcing them into a single state. The quantum possibility collapsed into reality. Royal flush in hearts. Perfect hand. The weeping regent laid down her cards. Full house, queens over kings. Excellent, but not enough. Winner. Human player Jake Morrison, the dealer announced. Binding protocol is now active. The hooded woman reached up and pulled back her hood. Jake's breath caught in his throat. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Her skin was silver like starlight, with glowing blue patterns that moved across her face like living tattoos. Her eyes were deep purple like captured nebulae, and tears flowed down her cheeks, glowing tears that left trails of light. Congratulations, Jake Morrison of Earth, she said, her voice breaking. You have just married Queen Zara Lynn of the Ashanti Empire, and you have doomed us both. The casino around them fell silent. Every alien in the place was staring at their table. Jake's mind struggled to process what had just happened. Marriage? Queen? What had he gotten himself into? I don't understand, Jake said. Queen Zara Lynn stood up, her tears still flowing like liquid starlight. The binding protocol is an ancient marriage contract. You won the game, so you won me. I am now your wife, and you are now my consort, whether either of us wants it or not. Security guards in heavy armor surrounded the table. Not to arrest them, Jake realized, but to protect them. The other gamblers backed away, some bowing, others running for the exits. Your Majesty, one of the guards said. The royal transport is ready. Zara Lynn looked at Jake with those impossible purple eyes. Come, husband. It is time you learned what it means to be married to an alien queen, and why I weep every night. Jake stood on shaking legs, still holding his winning cards. 20 minutes ago, he had been a broke freight engineer. Now he was married to royalty from another world. As they walked toward the casino exit, he wondered if this was the luckiest or unluckiest day of his life. The tears on Zara Lynn's face suggested it might be both. The royal transport ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was 3 times the size of the Lucky Strike and covered in the same glowing patterns that moved across Zara Lynn's skin. The inside was even more impressive, with walls that seemed to be made of captured starlight and furniture that adjusted itself to whoever sat down. Jake found himself in what the crew called the observation lounge, staring out at the stars as they jumped to hyperspace. Zara Lynn sat across from him, no longer crying but still distant and cold. She had changed from her casino robes into something that looked like liquid metal formed into a dress. You have questions, she said without looking at him. A few thousand, Jake replied, starting with why you were in that casino playing marriage roulette. Zara Lynn's laugh was bitter. Marriage roulette. I like that term. It describes the situation perfectly. She finally looked at him, those purple eyes filled with sadness. My father, Emperor Mordan, died 3 months ago. He left behind an empire in chaos and a daughter who was never supposed to rule. Jake leaned forward. What do you mean? I have 2 older brothers. Both died in the war with the hegemony last year. I was third in line, trained to be a diplomat, not an empress. When I took the throne, half the noble houses declared they would not follow a weak female ruler. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the window, Jake could see a massive planet covered in silver cities and blue oceans. 3 moons hung in the sky like jewels. Welcome to Veltar, Zara Lynn said, capital of the Ashanti Empire. Your new home. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jake saw the scope of the civilization below. Cities stretched across entire continents, connected by bridges that glowed with energy. Ships moved through the air like schools of fish following invisible traffic patterns. It was beautiful and overwhelming. The noble houses gave me an ultimatum, Zara Lynn continued. Marry one of their sons to unite the fractured politics or face civil war. Each house wanted their bloodline to claim the throne through marriage. So you decided to gamble instead? The binding protocol is older than our written history. If I married through the ancient laws, no house could claim I favored one over another. I thought, she paused, fresh tears starting to flow. I thought I would lose the game. I thought some politician would win me and I could at least protect my people from war. Jake watched the tears flow down her face. They were not like human tears. Each drop glowed with internal light before dissolving into sparkles that faded in the air. Why are you crying? It is what my people do when we are overwhelmed. The emotional stress causes our bodies to produce liquid starlight. It is both beautiful and terrible. Zarlin wiped her face, but new tears replaced the old ones. Previous queens in my family lived short lives because the court would stress them deliberately to harvest their tears. The substance powers our most advanced technology. The transport landed on a platform that extended from a palace that looked like it was carved from a single massive crystal. Thousands of Ashanti lined the walkways, their silver skin gleaming in the sunlight. Some cheered, others looked confused or angry. They do not know what to make of you, Zarlin said as guards formed around them. Humans are considered primitive by most of my people. We have faster ships, more advanced weapons, longer lives. To them, you are barely above the level of a smart animal. Jake felt the stares as they walked through the palace corridors. The Ashanti they passed whispered to each other in their musical language. Some bowed to Zarlin, but their eyes followed Jake with mixtures of curiosity and disgust. The throne room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. The throne itself was carved from black stone and surrounded by floating crystals that pulsed with energy. Dozens of nobles in elaborate robes stood waiting, their faces showing barely controlled anger. Presenting Queen Zarlin I, announced a voice that echoed through the chamber, and her consort Jake Morrison of Earth. The whispers that followed were not friendly. Jake caught a few words in Basic that he understood. Primitive, disgrace, unworthy. An elderly Ashanti with gold patterns on his skin stepped forward. Your Majesty, the Council of Houses demands an explanation. You were to choose from among our sons, not some alien barbarian. Zarlin's voice became formal and cold. Chancellor Morton, the binding protocol is law. The marriage is valid and final. Any who dispute this dispute the ancient ways of our people. The ancient ways never intended for our queen to marry outside our species, another noble shouted. This human knows nothing of our culture, our needs, our problems. Jake found his voice. You're right. I don't know much about your culture, but I know engineering, and I can see some of your problems from here. The throne room fell silent. Speaking without permission was apparently a serious breach of protocol. Chancellor Morton's patterns flared brighter. The primitive speaks out of turn. This proves our point about his unsuitability. Let him speak, Zarlin said quietly.
He is my husband and consort.
His words carry weight in this court. Jake looked around the room, then up at the floating crystals above the throne. Those power crystals. They're running at about 60% efficiency. The energy flow patterns are too rigid. You could increase output by 30% with some simple modifications. The nobles looked confused. One of them, a younger Ashanti with intricate blue patterns, stepped forward. How can you possibly know that? You have been on our world for less than an hour. I've been working with quantum energy systems for 10 years, Jake said. Different technology, same basic principles. Your systems are beautiful, but they're locked into fixed patterns. Sometimes you need a little chaos to improve efficiency. Chaos? Chancellor Morton spat. Our technology has worked perfectly for 1,000 years. We do not need primitive advice from a human. That night, Jake found himself in quarters that were larger than most apartments on Earth. The walls showed real-time views of space, and the furniture responded to his thoughts. But despite the luxury, he felt completely out of place. A soft knock on the door interrupted his brooding. Zarlin entered, no longer wearing her formal robes. She had changed into something simpler, though it still seemed to be made of liquid light. I wanted to apologize for the court's behavior, she said. They are not usually so hostile to guests. I'm not a guest anymore, am I? I'm family. That makes it worse. Zarlin sat down across from him, tears still flowing slowly down her face. I have been crying almost constantly since my father died. The stress of ruling, the pressure from the nobles, and now this marriage. My body cannot stop producing tears. Is it painful? Not physically, but emotionally. She touched her face where the glowing tears left trails. Each tear represents a piece of my freedom that I can never get back. My people need me to be strong, but strength for an Ashanti queen means accepting that you exist only to serve others. Jake leaned forward. That's not strength. That's just giving up. Zaralyn looked surprised. What do you mean? Where I come from, strength means fighting for what you believe in. It means making your own choices even when they're hard. You chose to gamble rather than accept a political marriage. That took guts, and look where it got me. Married to a stranger from a primitive world. Jake smiled. Hey, that stranger just solved one of your technical problems in 5 minutes. Maybe primitive isn't so bad. For the first time since he met her, Zaralyn almost smiled. Perhaps, but you do not understand the challenges we face. The noble houses are already plotting against you. They see you as a weakness they can exploit. Then we'll have to prove them wrong. We? Jake stood up and walked to the window showing the city below. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness, each one representing lives depending on their queen. I didn't ask for this marriage any more than you did. But we're stuck with each other now. We can either make it work or let your empire fall apart while we fight. Zaralyn joined him at the window. You would help me? Even though you were forced into this? I've been thinking about that. Yeah, I was tricked into this marriage, but you were trapped into it. The difference is I can choose what to do next, and I choose to help. The tears on Zaralyn's face slowed, then stopped for the first time in months. You are not what I expected from a human. Probably not what you expected from a husband either. No, she said softly. You are not. Outside the window, the first hints of dawn appeared over the alien city. Jake realized that whatever happened next, his old life was over. The question was whether he could build something better from the pieces. 3 weeks into his new life as alien royalty, Jake had learned several important things. First, Ashanti food was delicious but turned his stomach purple for hours after eating. Second, the palace had over 3,000 rooms and he was still getting lost. Third, someone was definitely trying to kill him. The first attempt had been subtle. A maintenance shaft collapsed while he was inspecting the power systems, missing him by inches. The second was less subtle. An energy blast that left a hole in the wall where his head had been moments before. The third attempt involved poisoned food, which Jake only avoided because his human digestive system rejected it violently before it could cause real harm. The council grows bolder, Zaralyn said as they walked through the palace's technical levels. Her tears had become less frequent, but they still appeared whenever stress mounted. They believe if they remove you, they can force me into a proper political marriage. Jake examined a quantum processor that was running far below capacity. Like everything else in the Ashanti technology, it was beautiful and precise, but inflexible. Let them try. I've got more important things to worry about, such as... Jake pulled out a crude tablet he had built from spare parts. It looked primitive compared to Ashanti technology, but it worked in ways their systems could not. Your empire is dying and nobody wants to admit it. Zaralyn stopped walking. What do you mean? I've been studying your technology for weeks. It's incredible, don't get me wrong, but it's also completely rigid. Your quantum computers can only solve problems they were programmed to solve. Your ships can only fly preset routes. Your manufacturing systems can only make exactly what they were designed for. Jake showed her the readings on his tablet. Look at these efficiency numbers. Your power systems are running at 60%. Your transportation network is backing up because it can't adapt to changing traffic. Your food production is down 30% because the farming systems can't adjust to weather changes. But these systems have worked for 1,000 years, Zaralyn protested. Yeah, when everything stayed the same. But your empire is growing. You're encountering new problems, new challenges, and your technology can't adapt because it was never designed to. They reached the main computer core, a massive crystalline structure that hummed with contained energy. Jake pulled out a small device he had built from human and Ashanti components. What is that? Zaralyn asked. I call it a chaos driver. It introduces random variables into the system calculations. Instead of following preset patterns, the computer will try new solutions to problems. That sounds dangerous, Jake grinned. That's what makes it work. Watch. He connected his device to one of the quantum processors. Immediately, the patterns of light flowing through the crystal changed from rigid geometric shapes to something more organic and flowing. Within minutes, the processor's efficiency jumped from 65% to 90%. Impossible, Zaralyn breathed. That's what I love about being human. We specialize in impossible. Over the following days, Jake's improvements spread through the palace systems. Energy flowed more efficiently. Transport systems adapted to changing patterns. Even the food processors began creating new combinations of flavors that the Ashanti had never tasted before. Not everyone was pleased with the changes. You are corrupting our technology with your primitive chaos, Chancellor Morton declared during a council meeting. These modifications violate thousands of years of careful engineering. They also increased food production by 20% system-wide, replied Lady Vera Kim, one of the younger nobles who had become Jake's strongest supporter. Perhaps it is time to consider that our ancestors, wise as they were, did not have all the answers. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Half the nobles supported the improvements, seeing the obvious benefits. The other half viewed any change as dangerous corruption of their perfect civilization. Jake stood up and the arguing slowly died down. Even his critics had learned to listen when he spoke, if only to find flaws in his ideas. I understand your concerns, he said. Change is scary, but you're facing a choice. You can keep your technology exactly as it is and watch your empire slowly become less competitive, less efficient, less able to handle new challenges. Or you can adapt. Adapt to what? Demanded one of the older nobles. To the fact that the galaxy is changing around you. Other species are advancing. New threats are emerging. Your empire either grows and changes or it gets left behind. Chancellor Morton's gold patterns flared with anger. And you think your primitive human methods are the answer? I think diversity of thought is the answer. You've spent 1,000 years perfecting one way of doing things. That's impressive. But there are other ways, and some of them might be better for some problems. After the council meeting, Jake found himself alone with Zara Lynn in her private study. The room was filled with floating displays showing information from across the empire. Many of the displays were now showing improved numbers thanks to Jake's modifications. The improvements are working beyond our projections, Zara Lynn said. Food production, energy efficiency, transportation, everything is running better than it has in decades. Good. But that's not why you asked me here. Zara Lynn's tears started flowing again, but slower than before. You are changing more than just our technology, Jake. You are changing how our people think. Some love you for it, others want me dead. Yeah, I figured that out around the third assassination attempt. I fear for you. The old guard will not give up easily. They see you as a threat to everything they believe in. Jake walked over to one of the displays showing ship movements around the Empire's borders. Maybe I am a threat. Maybe that's not a bad thing. What do you mean? Look at this data. Your enemies are building new weapons, developing new strategies. But your military response is exactly the same as it was 50 years ago. Same formation, same tactics, same thinking. How long before that stops working? Zara Lynn studied the displays with new eyes. You think we are becoming vulnerable? I think you're already vulnerable. You just haven't faced an enemy smart enough to exploit it yet. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Red lights flashed, and an automated voice began speaking in the Ashanti language. What's happening? Jake asked. Zara Lynn's face went pale, her silver skin losing its luster. Attack. Something is attacking the outer colonies. They rushed to the command center where dozens of Ashanti officers worked frantically at control stations. Admiral Torgeth, the Empire's military commander, looked up as they entered. Your Majesty, we have multiple reports of attacks on our frontier worlds. The attackers are using some kind of new technology that our sensors cannot identify. Show me, Zara Lynn commanded. The main display lit up with tactical information. 3 colony worlds had gone silent within the past hour. Scout ships sent to investigate had also disappeared. Could it be the hegemony? Zara Lynn asked. Unknown, Your Majesty. The attack patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Jake studied the display, his engineer's mind working through the problem. What kind of new technology? Admiral Torgeth looked annoyed at the interruption. Human, this is a military matter. He is my consort, Zara Lynn interrupted firmly. Answer his question. Our scouts reported ships that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. They appeared to be immune to our quantum weapons, Jake frowned. Phase in and out? Like they were shifting between dimensions? That is impossible. Dimensional technology does not exist, for you maybe, but if someone else figured it out, Jake turned to Zara Lynn. I need to see the technical data from those scout ships. All of it. Jake, what are you thinking? I'm thinking your rigid technology just met something more flexible than it is. And I'm thinking we need to get very creative very quickly, or your empire is about to discover what happens when perfect systems meet perfect chaos. Outside the command center windows, more alarms began sounding across the capital city. Whatever was attacking the outer colonies was moving fast, and the Ashanti military's traditional responses were not working. Jake looked at the fear in Zara Lynn's purple eyes and made a decision that would change everything. Give me access to your defense systems. All of them. Jake, that is unprecedented. No outsider has ever... I'm not an outsider anymore. I'm your husband, and right now, I might be the only person in this empire who can think outside the box enough to stop whatever this is. Zara Lynn stared at him for a long moment, tears flowing freely now. Then she turned to Admiral Torgeth. Give him full access. Emergency authorization. The Admiral looked shocked. Your Majesty, the security protocols are about to become irrelevant if we all die, Jake said grimly. Trust me, I've got some very non-traditional ideas about how to fight a war. Jake spent the next 6 hours deep in the Ashanti defense networks, and what he found horrified him. The attacks on the outer colonies were not random. They were systematic, precise, and designed to exploit every weakness in Ashanti technology. Whoever is doing this knows your systems better than you do, he told the assembled military command. Look at these attack patterns. They hit your sensor arrays first, then your communication networks, then your power stations. Each target was chosen to maximize damage while avoiding your strongest defenses. Admiral Torgeth studied the tactical displays with growing unease. You are suggesting the enemy has detailed knowledge of our military capabilities? I'm suggesting the enemy is your military capabilities, or was, anyway. Zara Lynn's tears were flowing steadily now, leaving glowing trails down her face. Explain. Jake pulled up a complex diagram showing the attack ship's energy signatures. These aren't alien vessels using unknown technology. These are Ashanti ships using modified Ashanti technology. Look at the quantum signatures. They match your own fleet's patterns exactly. The command center fell silent except for the soft humming of quantum processors. That is impossible, Admiral Torgeth said. All our ships are accounted for. All your current ships, maybe. But what about old ones? Decommissioned vessels? Test platforms? Jake worked at his tablet, cross-referencing data. There. The attack signatures match 3 heavy cruisers that were supposedly destroyed during the war with the hegemony 2 years ago. Chancellor Morthan, who had been watching from the back of the room, stepped forward. You are suggesting our own dead have returned to haunt us? I'm suggesting someone salvaged those ships and upgraded them with technology you don't have. Technology that lets them phase between dimensions. Jake turned to face the council members who had gathered to watch the crisis unfold. The question is, who has access to dimensional research? The silence that followed was telling. Jake saw several of the older nobles exchange glances, and Chancellor Morthan's gold patterns dimmed slightly. Lady Vera Kim spoke up hesitantly. There are legends, stories of ancient Ashanti technology that was banned centuries ago, research into folding space itself. Where would records of this research be kept? Jake asked. The Forbidden Archives, Zara Lynn said quietly, but those have been sealed for 500 years. Only the highest levels of government have access. Jake looked around the room at the assembled nobles and military officers. So we're looking for someone with access to ancient forbidden technology, detailed knowledge of current military systems, and the resources to salvage and modify warships. That's a pretty short list. Admiral Torgeth was studying his tactical displays with new intensity. The attacks are accelerating. 6 more colonies have gone silent in the past hour. At this rate, they will reach the core worlds within days. Your Majesty, Chancellor Morthan said, his voice carefully controlled. Perhaps it is time to consider negotiation. If these attackers are indeed using ancient Ashanti technology, they may be more reasonable than foreign invaders. Negotiate? Jake stared at the older noble. They're destroying entire colonies. What exactly do you think they want to negotiate about? Perhaps they object to recent changes in our society. Perhaps they seek a return to traditional ways. The way Morthan's eyes flicked toward Jake made his meaning clear. Zara Lynn caught it too, her tears flowing faster. "You think this is about my marriage to Jake?" "I think," Lady Verikim said carefully, "that the timing is suspicious. These attacks began shortly after the humans' technological modifications were implemented empire-wide." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Wait, you think someone is attacking your colonies because I improved your efficiency ratings?" "Because you corrupted our perfect systems with chaos," another noble said. "Perhaps the attackers seek to restore purity to our technology." "That's insane. Nobody starts a war over engineering philosophy." Admiral Torgeth cleared his throat. "Actually, human, we did fight a civil war 3 centuries ago over exactly that issue. The Purist Rebellion nearly destroyed the Empire." Jake ran his hands through his hair, trying to process this information. "Okay, so let me get this straight. Someone with access to forbidden technology is attacking your colonies because they don't like my modifications to your systems?" "It is possible," Zara Lynn said reluctantly. "The old families have always believed that our technology should remain unchanged, pure, sacred. And now they're willing to commit genocide to prove their point?" Before anyone could answer, new alarms began sounding. The main tactical display updated with worse news. The mystery attackers had destroyed a major military depot and were now moving toward the industrial worlds that supplied the Empire's core systems. "We need to respond," Admiral Torgeth said. "I recommend deploying the entire home fleet." "To fight ships that can phase in and out of normal space?" Jake shook his head. "Your weapons can't hit targets that aren't fully in this dimension. You need a different approach." "What do you suggest?" Jake studied the attack patterns again, his mind racing through possibilities. "We need to understand how their dimensional technology works, and we need to understand it fast." "The research was banned for good reason," Chancellor Morthan warned. "Dimensional manipulation is dangerous beyond measure. More dangerous than letting them destroy the Empire." Zara Lynn wiped the tears from her face with a decisive gesture. "Take me to the Forbidden Archives." The archives were located deep beneath the palace in chambers that had been sealed for centuries. The air was thick and stale, and the quantum locks required Zara Lynn's personal biometric signature to open. Inside, Jake found the most advanced technology he had ever seen. Research equipment that made the palace's systems look primitive, and data crystals containing information that had been locked away for 500 years. "Why was this research banned?" he asked as they activated the ancient systems. "Because it worked too well," Zara Lynn replied, tears starting to flow again. "The researchers discovered how to fold space, to move between dimensions, to exist in multiple realities at once. But the process required—" She paused, unable to continue. Lady Verikim, who had accompanied them, finished the sentence. "It required the life force of living beings to power the dimensional engines. The research was banned when they realized what they had created." Jake stared at the data flowing across the ancient displays. "They built engines that ate people?" "Not ate. Absorbed. The dimensional barriers can only be crossed by sacrificing the quantum essence of sentient life." "And someone has rebuilt this technology?" "Improved it," Zara Lynn said, studying the readouts. "According to these readings, the attacks are being powered by thousands of lives. Each time they phase ships between dimensions, more people die." Jake felt sick. "We're not just facing a military attack. We're facing a genocide machine that runs on murder." The ancient equipment suddenly chimed with an incoming signal. The main display activated, showing a figure in ornate robes standing on the bridge of an Ashanti warship. "Sister," the figure said, removing his hood to reveal features similar to Zara Lynn's but twisted with fanaticism. "I had hoped you would come to the archives. It saves me the trouble of explaining everything twice." Zara Lynn gasped. "Corson, you died in the war." "I saw the reports myself. I allowed everyone to believe I was dead. It was easier to work without the burden of royal expectations." Prince Corson smiled coldly. "I have spent 2 years rebuilding the ancient technology, perfecting what our ancestors began. Soon, the Empire will be pure again. You're murdering innocent people. I am saving our civilization from corruption. The humans' chaos-driven modifications are a cancer that will destroy everything our people have built. I am the cure. Jake stepped into view of the communication array. So you're the one trying to kill me. Ah, the primitive speaks. Yes, human, your death is necessary, but first you will watch as I purge every trace of your contamination from our systems. Every ship using your modifications, every world that has accepted your chaos, all will be cleansed. You're completely insane. I am completely dedicated. The dimensional engines require sacrifices, yes, but what is the cost of a few million lives compared to saving our entire species from corruption? The transmission ended, leaving them staring at a blank screen. Zara Lynn was crying freely now, her tears falling like liquid stars. My brother. My own brother is doing this. Jake put his arm around her shoulders, feeling her shake with grief and shock. We'll stop him. How? He has dimensional technology that makes him nearly invulnerable, and he's willing to sacrifice unlimited lives to power it. Jake looked at the ancient research data still flowing across the displays. Somewhere in that information was the key to defeating Coruscant's twisted technology. He just had to find it before the prince destroyed everything Zara Lynn's empire had built. We're going to beat him with the one thing he can't plan for, Jake said grimly. What? Pure, chaotic, unpredictable human ingenuity. He thinks he knows how I work, but he's about to learn that humans are much more adaptable than he imagines. Jake spent the next 18 hours doing something no Ashanti had attempted. In 500 years, he tried to understand dimensional technology by completely ignoring how it was supposed to work, while the Royal Engineers studied the ancient research data methodically. Jake approached the problem like a human. He took the dimensional equations apart, mixed them with Earth chaos theory, and added random variables that made the Ashanti scientists nervous. This is madness, Admiral Torgeth said, watching Jake's calculations fill multiple displays. You are treating dimensional mathematics like a children's puzzle. That's exactly what I'm doing, Jake replied, connecting another of his improvised devices to the ancient equipment. Your brother thinks in straight lines. He sees the dimensional engines as precise tools that require specific inputs. But what if we make the inputs impossible to predict? Zara Lynn had not stopped crying since learning about her brother's betrayal. The tears fell constantly now, pooling on the floor of the archive chamber in glowing puddles. The fleet reports 20 more colonies destroyed. Coruscant is moving faster than we predicted. Because he's overconfident, Jake said. He thinks he has the only dimensional technology in the galaxy. He's about to learn otherwise. Lady Verakim looked skeptical. You have found a way to counter his weapons? Better. I've found a way to turn his weapons against him. Jake activated his modified equipment, and the ancient chamber filled with chaotic energy patterns that made everyone's skin tingle. Dimensional barriers work both ways. If he can phase out of our reality to avoid our weapons, we can phase into his reality to hit him where he thinks he's safe. That is impossible, several of the Ashanti engineers said in unison. So was improving your efficiency ratings, but we did that too. Jake grinned as his readings stabilized. The trick is not to think like an Ashanti. You people are too logical. Sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense. The test results were promising but limited. Jake's improvised dimensional device could phase small objects between realities, but it required enormous amounts of power and could only work for a few seconds at a time. It is not enough, Admiral Torgeth said. We cannot build weapons fast enough to matter. We don't need to build weapons, Jake said. We need to build a trap. 3 hours later, Jake's plan was ready. It was insane, dangerous, and violated every principle of Ashanti military doctrine, which, as Jake pointed out, was exactly why it might work. You want to let Prince Coruscant attack the capital? Chancellor Mordhan looked horrified. That is suicide. No, that's bait. He thinks he's invincible because he can phase between dimensions. But what if we turn the capital itself into a dimensional trap? Jake's plan required evacuating most of the city and turning the palace's power systems into a massive dimensional anchor. When Coruscant's ships phased into attack, the anchor would lock them into normal space long enough for the remaining defenses to strike. The power requirements are staggering, Lady Vericum said. We would need to drain the entire planetary grid. Not the entire grid, Jake said quietly. We need a more concentrated power source. He looked at Zara Lynn, whose tears were still flowing steadily. The glowing drops had been pooling in collection devices Jake had placed around the chamber, creating a reservoir of liquid starlight. No, Zara Lynn said, understanding immediately. I will not power your device with my tears. It's the only energy source pure enough to stabilize the dimensional anchor, and we need a lot of it. You are asking me to suffer deliberately to create more tears. That is exactly what the old queens endured. Jake took her hands in his, feeling the warmth of her silver skin. I'm asking you to make a choice. Your ancestors had no choice. They were forced to cry for the benefit of others. This time you choose. You sacrifice for your people because you want to, not because you have to. Zara Lynn looked around the chamber at the faces of her advisors, all waiting for her decision. Outside, reports continued coming in of colonies burning under her brother's attack. If I do this, how much suffering will it require? All of it, Jake said honestly. Every fear, every grief, every moment of pain you've held back since becoming queen. You'll have to feel it all at once. Zara Lynn closed her eyes, and when she opened them, her tears were flowing faster than ever. Then let us begin. The process was agonizing to watch. Jake connected Zara Lynn to devices that amplified her emotional state, forcing her to experience every trauma, every loss, every moment of despair she had suppressed. Her tears flowed like rivers, each drop containing enough quantum energy to power a small city. Enough, Lady Vericum said after an hour. She cannot endure much more. But Jake could see something the others missed. Yes, Zara Lynn was crying from pain and fear, but she was also crying from hope. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own sacrifice instead of having it imposed upon her. I can continue, Zara Lynn said through her tears. For my people. For our future. By the time Coruscant's fleet appeared in orbit around Veltar, the dimensional anchor was ready. The prince brought 50 warships, each one powered by the deaths of thousands of innocent people. They phased into normal space directly above the capital, confident in their invulnerability. Sister, Coruscant's voice echoed through the palace's communication systems. You have made this too easy. I expected more resistance from your human pet. I'm right here, Jake replied, activating the dimensional anchor. The effect was immediate and devastating. Coruscant's ships, caught in the middle of a dimensional phase, were suddenly locked between realities. They could not return to normal space, but they could not escape to their dimensional refuge either. What have you done? Coruscant screamed over the comm. I broke your toys, Jake said. Turns out dimensional engines are really fragile when you introduce chaotic variables into their control systems. But Jake's triumph was short-lived. The trapped ships began exploding as their dimensional engines overloaded, and each explosion tore holes in the fabric of space itself. Reality began unraveling around the capital. The dimensional barriers are collapsing, Admiral Torgeth reported. The city will be consumed by dimensional chaos within minutes. Jake looked at his readings and realized his mistake. He had been so focused on trapping Coruscant that he had not considered what would happen when 50 dimensional engines failed simultaneously. There might be a way, he said desperately, if we can stabilize the dimensional barriers before they collapse completely. How? Jake looked at Zara Lynn, who was still connected to the power system, still crying tears of liquid starlight. We need more power. A lot more. I cannot produce any more, she said weakly. I have given everything. Not everything, Jake said. He walked over to her and took her hand. You've been crying from pain and sacrifice. But what about tears of joy? Joy. The city is about to be destroyed. No, it's about to be saved. Because you're not alone anymore. You have a husband who loves you, advisors who believe in you, and an empire of people who are willing to fight for the future you're building together. For the first time since Jake had met her, Zara Lynn smiled through her tears. You love me? Completely, totally, ridiculously. The tears that flowed now were different. Instead of the blue-white light of pain and fear, they shone with warm golden radiance. Tears of happiness, tears of love, tears of hope for the future. The dimensional anchor stabilized. The holes in space began to close, and Coruscant's trapped fleet simply vanished, erased from existence by the dimensional collapse they had caused. 6 months later, Jake stood on the palace balcony, watching the sunrise over a city that was rebuilding itself with a mixture of ancient wisdom and human innovation. The Ashanti Empire was thriving, having learned to balance tradition with adaptation. Zara Lynn joined him, no longer crying constantly. Her tears now came when she chose them, sometimes from sorrow, sometimes from joy, but always by her own decision. "Any regrets?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. Jake thought about his old life on freight haulers, always moving from place to place with no real home. Then he looked at the woman beside him, brilliant, beautiful, and strong enough to cry when she needed to and smile when she chose to. "Just one," he said. "What's that?" "I wish I could go back to that casino and thank the dealer. Losing my ship was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me." Zara Lynn laughed, a sound like music made of starlight. "The Vorthaks say that the best gambling victories are the ones where everyone wins. Do we count as everyone winning? Our empire is peaceful. Our technology is advancing, our people are happy, and I am married to the most wonderfully chaotic human in the galaxy." "I would say that qualifies." Jake kissed her forehead, tasting the faint sweetness of the tears she had shed from happiness. "I love you too, Your Majesty." "Just Zara Lynn," she said. "My husband does not need to use titles." As they watched the alien sun rise over their alien city, Jake reflected that sometimes the biggest jackpots came from the most unexpected places. He had gambled everything on a single hand of cards and won something he never knew he wanted. A home, a purpose, and a love that literally shone like captured starlight. Not bad for a down-on-his-luck freight engineer who just wanted passage home. The tears on Zara Lynn's face caught the morning light and sparkled like tiny stars, each one a reminder that the